Good evening, sir.
Yo, this is episode 82 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast with your host, Brett and CH. Today's topics: Bitcoin briefly was back above 7,000. It was a ton of fun, a lot of DMs, a lot of text messages, a lot of coworkers talking, a lot of FOMO. We'll talk about that, talk a little bit about the sentiment. HODLers were essentially unfazed from that last dip below 4,000. Unchained Capital put out a little bit of analysis on the just blockchain analysis, showing which coins were moving, how old they were. Looks like hodlers are relatively unfazed, so we'll go over that. And then last topic, volatility drives demand. There was a good report from Coinbase that came out, and Kraken also told everybody that their exchange signups are blowing up. So I kind of want to talk to all that because I think the recent volatility in the last couple of weeks has spurred interest from new coiners. But yeah, it was a crazy week last week, man. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's, again, as you and I talked about, this whole coronavirus thing has definitely thrown an axe into not just yours and my life, but just everyone's lives. And things are, at least for the time being, different. And, I'm hanging in there, doing fine, but it's crazy. I mean, you and I not joke about it, but we were like, 10 weeks ago when it was like, wow, this is kind of a big deal. Maybe people will pay attention to this. And I guess I just didn't, as much as I foresaw as bad as this was going to be, I just didn't, I guess over 6.6 million unemployed claimants or whatever it was this week. Something ridiculous. It was over 6 million.
Yeah, I mean, when we had the last episode, we talked about unemployment numbers, and that was from the week prior, where it was 3 million jobless claims. Now it's an additional 6 to that. So we're seeing it's finally starting to come in, right? The numbers are showing what's actually going on. Certain states are starting to shut down certain businesses and stuff like that. And so, more to come. I have a feeling that number will definitely increase before it starts to decrease. I just don't know. I don't know where we are in the eye of the storm, but I'm sure we're going to keep talking about it. So,
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, even a local hospital near me, and I'll just say a name, I'll dox my location, Sarasota Memorial. I was reading a link about it and reading it in the paper too. They're furloughing a bunch of workers, and I was like, at first I was like, how the hell's a hospital, furloughing workers? And then, as I read it more, it made sense. It was like people who had like procedures that need to be done, surgeries that weren't emergency surgeries that like life or death, aren't doing them. I remember I had a doctor appointment, I think in like 2 weeks ago. I didn't go. I was like, it wasn't, life or threatening for me. I was just like, I really don't feel like driving, an hour. And it wasn't, I don't think it was inside the hospital, but still, I was just like, I really don't feel like exposing myself to a shit ton of people for, something
for what?
Wait. Exactly. Right. Something like wait. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. All right, well, why don't we jump right in here? The first links are from Unchained Capital, and we had talked about the dump under 4K in episode 78. Thanks for all the additional views for that one. We do appreciate it. And Unchained came out with some new analysis that pretty much the TLDR was hodlers were unfazed during the dump. So when the dump happened, nobody I knew personally was calling me up saying, I'm capitulating, I'm selling, fuck Bitcoin, blah, 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 blah. I didn't hear from anyone specifically, even in my DMs, that they were unloading their positions. And Mike Novogratz from, I forget which hedge fund he runs, Galaxy Digital, I think.
Yeah, Galaxy.
Galaxy. Yeah, he had tweeted that nobody he knew, any of his large holders, nobody was selling. So he was kind of pointing to liquidations, right, and just leverage that was being unwound, and maybe a few retail players. But other than that, we saw a lot more inflows of cash and way more buyers than sellers. So I don't think anybody you and I would know were actually capitulating. I think it was just a cascade of just leverage getting wiped out. And, we did discuss that, and it looks like we're hearing a little bit more anecdotal confirmation of that. And one interesting thing to note, the aggregate leverage positions across all exchanges was around 4 billion before the dump. That's big, dude. I was surprised to hear it was that much.
Oh yeah, no, that's a lot of money. And like people, leverage is just if you're ever even considering trading, just stay away from leverage. That's all I can say. It seems cool and it's fun, but like even for instance, on that 1 day dump where we dumped, 38.98%, unless you had a bunch of margin and were very well positioned and know how to risk manage. If you had 3 times leverage, your position would be completely liquidated. And so, like, when you think about that, that dump, and to counter what you said earlier about people not dumping, I think part of the reason people didn't even dump was this thing happened like in hours. It was over, and we
Right.
bounced back. We as low as it went on BitMEX, it went down to like 3,500, but as low as it went, we bounced back to 6K pretty quickly. Like the bounce was immediate, and
Right.
and even though we touched 4,400 again, it was so quick that most people didn't even know what to do. So to kind of, I guess, play devil's advocate to why people weren't dumping, you know.
No, I mean, it happened so fast. That was the fastest I've ever seen anything like that. Even just by the hour, it was just,
Yeah.
dumping. But to get back into Unchained, their analysis, so we had talked about their HODL waves. I think we talked about that last summer. And, they're showing that coins that haven't moved for 5 years actually increased by 233,000 Bitcoin. So long-term hodlers didn't move coin around. They weren't looking to sell. And the majority of the activity during that dump was coming from coins who have moved in the last 6 months or younger, meaning these coins were recently moved. Maybe they were withdrawn from the exchange, but nobody who's been having their coins on their hardware wallet somewhere all of a sudden was like, all right, fuck it, I'm sending to the exchange, I'm getting rid of it. So it's interesting that you can actually do this kind of in-depth analysis. This is the only asset where anybody can go and look at it and see which coins are moving. And I didn't think of that till, this analysis comes out and you're looking and saying, oh, all these old coins are hanging in there. They're not moving at all. Did you have any thoughts on that? Just like the insights to the ledger itself. And this is the only asset where you can see not who is moving the coins around, but you get a good sense of what kind of person is moving the coins around.
It's definitely different. If you haven't ever used a block explorer, I don't use them exceedingly often, but it's pretty cool when you look at Bitcoin and crypto in general, just to see who are the holders. That's the greatest thing, like in calling out scams, like when we notably called out hex and other things. You can see when people are holding, like, oh, which ICO, why are these dudes bag holding all this Ethereum, or they're dumping all their Ethereum as you see them, send it to Bittrex or something. And that's what makes Bitcoin and crypto just such a unique thing, is you can see it in live time, what's happening. And again, going again for crypto and Bitcoin, you seeing the ability to see this kind of gives you an idea of who the players are, as you mentioned. And I think, again, if you wanted to know if someone was really, like, if someone decided to come tomorrow and market buy 10,000 Bitcoin, and just send it to one wallet, you'd be like, okay, who's this dude?
Right.
Which country or which bank is stepping in and market buying 10K BTC? Because I doubt there would be 10K BTC, at least, especially on one exchange, but across even all exchanges at, like, let's say the price is at 68.50 or 68.38 right now, it'd be hard to find within $100 of that price, I feel like. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's another interesting thing that I wanted to touch on was I heard a few horror stories of people who were using lending products, people who had were earning interest on their Bitcoin, like something on like BlockFi, who were very close to getting their positions liquidated, or where they needed to fund more because of the dump. And I personally haven't used any of those services yet. I'm still very hesitant just because there's so much volatility, both to the upside and the downside, where, if your coin's being lended out to someone who's shorting it and Bitcoin just decides to take off one night, you could lose your Bitcoin. And the same thing on the downside too. So that was a little bit of a wake-up call. People I knew personally were a little scared because they were getting close to either having their position liquidated or they needed to add some funding in there just because of the big decrease in price. So it was just a reminder that I wanted to talk about. Be very cautious if you are going to loan your BTC, because it's not guaranteed. There's no insurance on that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the lending side of that, the collateral side. Like, if you
Yep.
gave them 10 Bitcoin at $10,000 for $100,000 whatever loan, and now Bitcoin's at 3,900. Yeah, you're kind of wrecked.
Right. You would have had to dump in another couple BTC just to maintain the loan, right, and to cover that and get the loan to value back up to, I guess, whatever reasonable level they would say. But do you think there were any weak hands or leveraged positions that needed to get flushed out there, and that only strong hands remain, or do you think there's still more to come? Do you think there's still more leveraged positions that need to bleed out?
That's a good question. Again, as I said earlier, playing devil's advocate, that dump was so quick, and I'm going to go back down to low time frame, the 60-minute, which is our candlesticks. I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the dump. It really was. It was real quick before everyone could even do anything.
Right.
Like in the span of 5 days, Bitcoin went down 58%. I mean, but really the majority of that move happened in the last 24 hours of that. And then even if you wanted to dump the price, knowing I've traded long enough to know that an emotional person who was planning to dump at 3,800 is not going to dump after Bitcoin bounces from 3,800 up to 6K. They're just not. It's an emotional thing. I'm telling you, I just know it. So anybody who was planning on it didn't.
They missed their chance. Yeah.
Yeah, they missed their. I think what would make people dump more is if we just all of a sudden started bleeding from where we are now back to fucking 3K. If we just where it wasn't sudden, but every day we fucking shed even the I want to say the sell off from November 18 to the December 18 low. It was 40 days of just basically downwards price action for the most part. I mean,
right.
So we'll see what happens here. Again, the correlation between basically everything and equities going down has been astounding. Gold, silver sold off. All precious metals. Obviously, oil had a huge rally though this week, which will be pretty interesting. And apparently, people have been talking about headlines. I haven't been following it close enough, but oil did rally 32% this week, which is pretty incredible. And again, if this whole coronavirus thing was overblown, and hypothetically we return to normal in May, it would be interesting to see how this all plays out. I mean, I still think this is a giant pin in the everything bubble, and it's pretty apparent because so many people have been laid off in the leverage. But I think we might see some things start to come back. Then again, I could be wrong. This could be our 9/11, and we could be losing all our rights. So we'll find out. I mean, shit. Did you see that video of that paddleboarder who got arrested? They said, dude, that's fucking insane. People are in the U.S. meeting and congregating in all groups and sizes, and they arrest a dude in a fucking paddleboard in the Pacific Ocean by himself.
Right. It's what pissed me off? I saw that, and obviously it upset me. But when you think about how much did it cost to arrest that guy? Think about it.
Yeah, there's at least 2 or 3 boats.
The boats, all the
gas,
people.
Dude,
just
gas is not cheap, dude. Well, it's cheap now.
How much did it realistically cost to arrest this dude? $50,000. Maybe that's overshooting it. Maybe it's undershooting it. I don't know. A couple hours worth of a couple officers' time plus the boats and all this stuff. It's just insane.
Yeah, so they're not going to in California, and at least in major cities, they're not going to arrest people for all sorts of crime. But don't you fucking dare paddleboard in the Pacific Ocean by yourself. It's it's the insanity, and then you're seeing. I was reading an article from Zero Hedge earlier about you're seeing all these upscale stores like Louis Vuitton, etc. in downtown New York boarding up because they know it's coming. New York is probably there. I've seen reports a week of supplies left. Hospitals getting overrun. It's only a matter of time before crime, and then you think about all the officers who've been infected, so they can't be on duty. And I think New York City roughly has 8,000 police officers from reading, but obviously National Guard will probably come in, and they're already there, but it'll be more and more present as the weeks go on, and probably be armed with M4s and M16s. I would not be surprised very shortly here. We are approaching that point in major cities.
Yeah, it's funny. I had heard that San Francisco was also boarding up. There's some stores, businesses, other places who were boarding up, and I wasn't sure why, but now that you're saying that, it makes sense. If you are a business owner and you're thinking to yourself, well,
there's no repercussions.
The security that I used to rely on, and I mean, don't get me wrong, you can barely stop someone from robbing you or stealing from your business in San Francisco as it is. So now Like you really can't. So now it's like, okay, I could see why you'd want to board up your place. I didn't see why you'd need to do it like a couple days ago, but now that you're talking about it in New York, I could see why you'd want to take that extra step. Anything to slow down an attacker who wants to break into your place and steal your shit.
Well, yeah, I'm sure like a Louis Vuitton store in New York has over $1 million in merchandise in there, at least at market value. You know what I mean? So if you're a business owner there, it's like you know for a fact that if your store gets looted, there's very little chance that one, those people get caught considering the circumstances now, and then two, that you'll ever get the money back, or the product back. It's gone.
Right.
You can't. You're already losing revenue as it is, let alone. So we'll have to see here, but I hope things get better. As obviously sucks. Unfortunately, it took, I think, too long for a lot of the world leaders, a lot of news people, a lot of people that realized the severity of this. Had this been just realized in mid-January, late January, the market would have crashed in probably early February instead of late February, but it wouldn't have been as bad because everything would have been addressed much more normally. But we'll see.
Yeah. Let's shift gears and talk about volatility driving demand. And the reason I wanted to put this as a topic was just because of the hodlers being unfazed and cash coming in that's on the sidelines. I heard from an owner of an exchange in Canada who said he's seen more cash sitting on his exchange than he has since the exchange has been open. So in other words, there's a lot of people that are waiting to take their position, buy the dip, wait for a breakout. They're doing something. So there's a ton of cash on the exchange. Even your boy Ari Paul said that he had seen and heard from some newcoiners, people that he hadn't heard from previously, who were asking about Bitcoin, asking those questions. So I thought that the only time you see new people coming into the space was when there's a lot of volatility. And even for myself, one of my coworkers was sending me screenshots of text messages from people that he has like he's a real estate investor, does some other stuff, and he has a little group chat with his investing buddies from the Bay Area. And a couple of them were asking him about Bitcoin because he's like their Bitcoin guy and I'm his Bitcoin guy. So he's like sending them to me and he's like, what do I say? And I'm reading them and I was laughing and the guy's like, man, like I can't believe it. And this was all on the day when it was breaking out above 7,000, which is, one of the topics we wanted to touch on today. And it's funny because the guy nailed it. He's like, this is the last free market. He's like, it's pure capitalism. And I responded back to my buddy. I was like, dude, he 100% gets it. It is the last free market left standing, which is with as little regulation as humanly possible. And you're going to see some wild shit, which is, I think that's why you and I really love it, right? I mean, it is kind of beautiful to watch. Like the day when it dumped and then pumped again and then breaking back up again above 7,000 was like, it is awesome to see it happen.
It is. And it's like, it's again, like, as you noted, what that guy said to your coworker, mentioning, the price drives adoption here, Bitcoin going back over 7K after going back down below 4,000. People, it garners interest again. It's not dead. People, it's always funny, like the amount of people that thought, were bailing on crypto in December 18, at literally the bottom to only 6 months later to be back at 14K, literally 5x from the bottom.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's the only asset where you can see that kind of price action and these kinds of moves, and it's definitely the most emotional. Coinbase put out a pretty good little article there, and they were talking about the recent dump, and they were giving some key insights, and they were saying how they were seeing record-breaking numbers for the last 12 months on the exchange, which was good to see. They saw a 5x increase in cash and crypto deposits, totaling 1.3 billion. So, that anecdotally fits up with what I'd heard from my own sources. 2x increase in user signups. We got fresh meat coming to trade. I wish them luck. 3x increase in trading users, 6x increase in total traded volume. So that day was definitely insane, and that volatility really drive the demand. And it also fits my narrative, so I'm going to talk about it, I guess. Kraken is also on a hiring spree, which I thought was pretty interesting. So when you're thinking about how many layoffs we're seeing and how many businesses we expect to lay more people off, you can see how, that price signal in the marketplace is signaling Kraken and Coinbase to hire more people because they know the demand is coming. Kraken saw an 83% rise in signups and a 300% increase in verifications for people who were going through KYC. So I guess they wanted to up their limits and for their deposits. So I don't know. Do you have anything else on that? Just the whole volatility and new people coming into the market.
I just wanted to add on. I was just going to read this paragraph on the leverage part. This is quoted from the Coinbase blog article. It says, traditional equities markets limit the amount of leverage to 2 to 3 times. In contrast, Bitcoin has some offshore exchanges that offer 100x leverage, where $1 of Bitcoin could be used as collateral to back $100 in purchasing power. And I think off the top of my head, the exchanges I can think of are obviously BitMEX, Bybit, I think, is 100x, and I think Deribit is too. I could be wrong. I've never used Deribit or Bybit, but from what I've heard. Getting back to it, so Bitcoin has offered 100x leverage, where $1 of Bitcoin could be used as collateral to back $100 in purchasing power. To be fair, this is very risky. A position with 100x leverage would get forced closed if the market just moved 1% against you. So most traders hold positions at a more sensible 5 to 30 times leverage, but still notably higher than 2 to 3 times. Again, 5 to 30 times leverage is still very high. Like, again, that move, a 5 leverage position gets liquidated unless there's additional margin, the person posts collateral on a 20% move, which is big. But again, with Bitcoin, there's no circuit breakers. There's no saying, hey, it's overnight, so Bitcoin can only move 5% up or down. No, Bitcoin can move 20% in a minute candlestick. So it's you're at the risk of just getting completely slaughtered.
Yeah, no, it's I don't mess around. I don't even trade anymore. I stopped in 2017 after I felt like I got my clock cleaned. I realized what a waste of my time. I'm gonna make so much more just buying and stacking and hodling and shit posting on Twitter and recording podcasts. That's the best thing I can do for my hodl stack. But it's interesting to see. I guess we can kind of just shoot the shit about that pump back to 7K. Did you notice that the euphoria sense that was in the air, just the excitement again from a few days prior?
Going from going up to 7K, or what do you mean prior to that?
Like after the dump, and then it's, call it 10 days later or 20 days later, and then we're breaking back above 7K just in the last week. I felt my DMs were just blowing up. I wasn't sure if you were hearing or feeling anything similar.
There's a couple people that DM me about Bitcoin, at least on Instagram, and a few of them mentioned but like I usually use crypto Twitter as kind of my defined my where everyone's sentiments at Bitcoin. And like watching people like go crazy because we broke above that former 7K high that was set back in March 20th or whatever. And then like literally within an hour we dumped back below. So that kind of feels like the nature of a lot of these pumps lately. They're just not sustained, and we'll see. This level is very big. I think tomorrow. Today's Saturday. Sunday is going to be a big day to see where this weekly candle closes. We've since that 7K pump on April 2nd, the last 2 daily sticks have been inside bars. So we're just literally consolidating inside this. So there's going to be some fireworks in the next 21 hours. Just get ready.
Yeah, it's like it's funny because I'm really curious to see what happens next week with just the traditional markets, equities, oil, commodities, gold. It'll be I'm curious. I'm very curious what next week brings, because now you'll have a fresh week starting after more jobs data coming out. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. And I really want to see if everyone's talking about the decoupling, right? So what is does Bitcoin start to decouple at some point? And because I think you and I had both talked about, from an equity standpoint, it just feels like that was almost too fast to dump and then, V-shaped recovery. I almost don't buy it just because it was so quick. And I don't know. The whole thing is just, obviously you don't know. Nobody can predict the future, but I still don't. I feel people are complicit. Too many retail traders are buying the dip and all this stuff. And I just get a sense that there's more pain to happen.
Oh, I 100% agree. I think there's a lot more pain to have in equities. Whether that means that equities will continue to drag down Bitcoin and precious metals along with other things. That's a good question. I pulled up the silver chart here because silver and gold both followed the same path in 2008, where they dumped hard. Like silver went from 21 an ounce down to $8.30 or $8.50 an ounce from March 2008 to October 2008, which was basically the Lehman, right around the Lehman collapse. Right, the 2008 October was like one of the worst parts of the crisis. Even though the market continued to trade lower, that was peak volatility per the VIX. And after that, silver and gold, I had the silver chart up. Silver managed to rally from under $9 all the way up to 50 an ounce in the span of 2 years. So, it'll be interesting. I'm really watching to see if the gold and silver, because I'm seeing the physical side. I don't know if you probably follow some, people who are obviously in both Bitcoin and gold and precious metals.
Yep.
And I've seen a shit ton of people posting about this in the past few weeks. Is the physical demand, since obviously, especially since the coronavirus, for gold, silver, and the physical coins, or bars, bullion, etc., has skyrocketed. You can't find any physical silver for under $20. So, like for me, I've been looking at silver lately. I'm like, well, fucking silver, it was at like $11 now. It's at 14, and there's no physical. So at some point, I feel that the physical demand for gold and silver is gonna, since there's a huge gap here between the paper price and the physical demand, that's going to have to find some equilibrium and get back to normal, which I think will drive those higher. Now, does that mean Bitcoin goes higher? I don't know. Again, so I try to tell people Bitcoin hasn't seen a global recession yet. We just haven't, and to see where it goes will be interesting.
No, I think you made a really good point, and that's actually I have it on the list of topics to talk about. Just the physical demand for silver and gold and how that is sort of detaching a little bit from the paper markets, and there's a lot to touch on there. So we'll save that for the next episode. I definitely want to talk about it more, but you're right, and this is magic hour, right? Global recession, global pullback in all markets. Economies are just crumbling across the globe, and it's kind of Bitcoin's time to shine there. And while I am not optimistic that we're going to have like a Ray Dalio is not going to come out and be like, I'm buying Bitcoin to hedge my portfolio, right? They're not going to do that stuff. So it's almost like you're stuck relying on the retail Bitcoin schmuck who's going to keep stacking sats or whatever as the economy kind of collapses around us. And I guess I'm one of those schmucks. So, that's fine. But it'll be interesting to see how it performs. This is what it was made for. It was, born in the fire and ashes of 2008. And, it's been just making block after block for the last 10 years or so. And we're going to see. We're going to find out. I can't wait. I'm almost so excited to see how it happens, because you and I have been talking about this, the pending recession, right? Like how markets were just so fake and everything. And now it's finally happening. So it's like, okay, finally, I felt wrong for a year while Jesse Colombo had to quit off of Twitter because people were just ragging on him so much for, he's been calling it for a decade, literally since 2008. He's been like, something's not right. And now it's finally happening. Yeah. But this is the moment to see what happens.
It definitely, this is the time we will see. And we're going to see a lot of executives and board and all these higher ups blaming coronavirus for coronavirus is merely just, I guess, what do you say, the pin. There was a lot of underlying issues that just got completely exposed due to, companies being over leveraged, not enough cash, and then startups especially just vaporizing in the thin air because the coronavirus. The coronavirus is not the it's not the as I said, they're going to see all these executives blame coronavirus for what was underlying issues that have been going on for a decade, if not longer.
Right. No, I think you nailed it. I heard somebody mention, they said if a CEO or C-suite executive doesn't blame coronavirus, then they're doing a disservice to their company. But on the other hand, anyone who's been paying attention knows that the coronavirus is just an accelerant. And, these companies were stretched way too thin. I don't care about what kind of regulations, solvency ratios, and other stuff you have open. Nobody was prepared for this. And it takes these type of events to bring everything to the surface. You realize, all the bad loans that were given out, or they didn't have enough cash on hand to cover, whatever. It exposes so much mismanagement of the biggest institutions on the planet and the biggest corporations that you and I love and use every single day. Were totally mismanaged, and it takes events like this to show you that the emperor has no clothes, right? So that the tide comes back out, and none of these people are wearing a bathing suit, and they look like shit. AIG, that's the perfect one.
Dude, AIG, dude, it went down in the first quarter 52%.
Yeah, I mean, it's a joke.
Look at this chart. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the chart. You might, I don't know. If you can't, it's just a phenomenal chart. It's the lifelong chart of AIG. It peaks in 2000 at $1,850 a share, which I'm sure was after a share split. That's why the price is so ridiculous. But anyways, right. It consolidated after the 2001 recession and collapsed completely from $1,280 a share down to basically zero. I'm pretty sure is what it was.
Yeah, they had to get bailed out.
Yeah, so they went to zero. They went to, it says $6 down here, but zero. Yeah, this is heading back to zero again. Like, insurance is fucked. Like, if you're an insurer, you're fucked. Like, there's no way around it right now.
Yeah, it's crazy to see. Just people were not prepared, and both citizens, businesses. I mean, nobody was prepared, and I feel really bad for the recent small businesses who just started up, who were getting false signals from artificially suppressed interest rates that their business models were good ideas, and now there's no demand, not because people don't want their products, but because people can't use their products. And I do feel for them, because that's what happens in these markets. You get false signals, and you think certain things will end up being profitable, and they will not. And this exposes it so much. I mean, I feel bad. The majority of of the employment in the U.S. is like service workers, restaurants, stuff like that. Well, maybe this is going to show you, like, we had too many restaurants. People were going out to eat way too much. All of a sudden, everybody stops. People aren't even ordering takeout anymore. They wise up very quickly, and it shows you how much malinvestment there actually was out there.
Yeah, and it's terrible because, as you said perfectly, small businesses can crush here, and it's like. And it's not like we're not talking about startup. I'm talking about small business, like the bar I worked at. There was like a food takeout place. Mainly just did carry out. And I don't live there anymore, but like I'm sure they getting crushed. Like I'm thinking of all these new small businesses people opened up. They're just getting completely crushed because there's no demand for anything. People, and you nailed it right there. This might be the end of going out and dining out as we know it. Like my dad's a big guy at eating out, and I know he's not eating out now anymore. I mean, it doesn't mean he doesn't cook and his wife doesn't cook, but still. It's just one of those things where things vastly change. And, like, I get it. It's convenience. When you're working a lot, it's very convenient to go out and eat, versus cook and prep the meal ahead of time, bring it to work, etc. It just keeps things easier. But this is going to, again, the lasting effects from this are going to be hard to tell how long it plays out. And I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast recorded prior on 81, but I think it was Shy Girl on Twitter. She mentioned that, she's like, I was in a store and it just felt completely awkward whenever you got anywhere close to people. And I haven't felt that as much, maybe because I kind of knew this was coming type of thing when I wear a mask and goggles and whatever. But it's going to be, it's going to take a while for people to feel normal. Because here again, this virus was a meme in January and February. People didn't take it seriously. Our government didn't take it seriously. C-suite executives didn't take it seriously. The biggest names on news, sports, etc., couldn't see what was right in front of their faces. And now there is no sports. Now there is no eating out. Now there is no events. Now there is no concerts. And, if if you just looked at it for what it was right there.
Yeah, it was obvious to anybody who was looking, and I'm going to stick to that story just because I think you and I were two of the people who were watching it kind of unfold, talking about it. I mean, we started talking about it you and I personally, middle of January, probably. We talked about it on the podcast towards the end of January, and then one of our actual titles has coronavirus in it from, early. We recorded it in early February, so I don't think it was too difficult to see coming. I think. Well, hindsight's 2020, right? Everybody could have done a lot differently. I don't want to harp on it too much, but it can change things permanently. Just the way people think, and I hope that some of these are good things, right? I hope people maybe take their sanitary or hygiene a little bit more seriously, whether it's washing your hands a little bit more. And what else I hope it changes is, at least in the United States, people not being afraid to wear a mask, because if everybody was masked up earlier on, I don't think it would be as bad today. The whole thing about masks don't work, it's just a total crock of shit. If you watch any of those videos of like people using a scarf makes a difference, you know what I mean? So it's like, I hope that that's a permanent change, because in Asian countries, everybody wears a mask. Nobody gives a shit, and you just go along your day. But I can tell now, I have an N95 mask, and when I'm walking around or have to go to the grocery store or something, I have it on. Yeah, you get a couple looks here and there, not nearly as many as I would have 6 months ago.
No,
like 6 months ago, if you wore one, you would
have been shot in public if you wore a mask, dude.
Yeah, you'd get the call the cops on you or something. But now it's like, oh yeah, I wish I had one. But I hope that's a permanent change, because people, for whatever reason, go out when they're sick as fuck, coronavirus, flu, whatever. They still go out, they go to the gym, they get their fucking germs on everything. It's disgusting. And I hope that masks just become a little bit more common. It would definitely be helpful. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, and that's perfect. Like, anyone who told you that masks don't work, masks are ineffective, should be tarred and feathered, I think, at this point. Like, or publicly stoned. Like, seriously. Dude, the amount of fucking people, whether it was on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, people from the White House, people in Congress, the fucking CDC, you name it, who were just like, hey, masks don't work. They only work for people who are sick. Don't wear them. Bull fucking shit. Anything in front of your mouth is better than nothing. And it is mind-boggling. I remember I would like, and I think it would have been like March 15th or 14th, I had to go on and bought some stuff. And I was wearing my mask, goggles, gloves, and I wear a boonie hat. To cover my head, whatever, and like people were giving me looks, but like I went to the grocery store the other day. I was definitely the most covered person. I wear long socks, long pants, long shirt, and goggles, gloves, the heavy duty respirator. But there was a lot of people with N95s, surgical masks, fucking people with t-shirts around their head. So I wasn't getting as many looks, dude, the people who weren't wearing masks, man, it's like awkward. It's like, oh, you don't have a mask on. This is kind of awkward now. Like, right. we're at that inflection point on the S curve of adoption of masks in the U.S. We've hit over that. I think when I was at the grocery store, I think half the people roughly had masks. So I think we're at that like 50% part, and I'm in an area where it's not as serious per se versus like New York City. I'm in Florida right now, but the point being is that we had over probably almost 8 weeks of masks don't work from the CDC, from the White House, from Congress, from fucking all the newscasters. And the best part is all these people have flipped the script. Like, I saw someone post it perfectly. And again, this is where politics, anyway, if you just had the ability to, like, the problem with America is our partisan politics just fucking kills us. And again, it shows in a time of crisis, our country's leaders, and I say leaders in quotation marks, can't pull their shit together, can't disregard their bipartisan bullshit, and do the right thing. And like, again, like, my point going back to this was, if you were able just to let go of your partisan nonsense in the end of January, early February, and just look at it for what it was when, like, for instance, I'm going to use Fox News. I'm going to put them out there. Fox News was initially attacking people on the left for saying they're attacking Trump for not responding. And it's like, and they're downplaying the virus solely for partisan interests, not for the interests of their viewers. And then Fox News is obviously fucking completely 180. Same with like Dr. Drew. Same with, I'm pretty sure, Rachel Maddow or Dr. Drew on CNN. said he's not scared of this virus, and like someone put it up like on February 2nd or February 4th, he said that, and then like his complete change like a month later. There are so many people, notable faces in American media, etc. That not just media, obviously executives, etc. That just downplayed that was so obvious. And now that they're gonna flip sides and tell us what to do, no, fuck no. I'm sorry. Like if you had this wrong from the beginning, like no.
Yeah, no, it's I think that's a good way to kind of put it there. And it's amazing to watch how quickly the script flips, how quickly people like that hive mind of the normies who still get all their news from like CNN and stuff like that. And even, my coworker, he was telling me it was just the flu from when I was telling him in February. I'm like, man, like this might seem a little wacky. What's going on here? I think this might end up being a big deal. And it was no, until all of a sudden, like the snap of a finger. And I know we talked about this on a prior episode of just like that was, to me, that reminded me so much of 2017, where all of a sudden overnight, every single person was talking about Bitcoin, crypto, signing up for Coinbase, Binance. Like all of a sudden it was just everyone.
Same thing, dude. Yep.
And this was exactly the same, just with a different group of normies, right?
It was a lot faster. A lot faster. A lot faster because this other time frame was crunched, versus crypto. You could say the crypto time frame could be expanded from 2010, but if you really want to keep the crypto time frame to 2017 into early 2018, we went from it felt like we went from like the October. We were mainly like in the winter and fall of spring of 2017 and summer, it felt like, and then it felt like we hit Thanksgiving like 2017 crypto overnight with this virus. Like with my uncle, I texted a lot of family members about this ahead of time, telling them, and late January and February, all about this. Like, this is a big deal. Start buying supplies, food, and water. No one's taking this serious. And I was told numerous times it's not a big deal, no big deal. My uncle's a perfect example. He fucking flipped. The normie switch flipped, dude. And I bet it's because like people on Fox News took it seriously. And I don't mean to, it's just why. Because the people he watches on TV were like, this is serious, people are dying. And it took that, instead of him just looking at the data I was trying to give him. But, again, I'm a 24-year-old gambling degenerate, so I get it. That's just like, I get it.
It's too funny. I don't know. I think that's probably a good way to wrap it up. I mean, we touched on all the things that I wanted to touch on. Looks like we had the dump. Volatility's back. HODLers are unfazed. Still no fucking clue what happens next. I can't wait to see what next week brings. I mean, such a crazy time, but also very exciting. So, I don't know. I guess everybody be safe out there. This is episode 82. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a shout out. Leave us a comment. Follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That definitely helps out. Take care of each other out there and be safe. Peace.